Hi everyone, I'm Rincey and this is Rincey Reads. So today I'm going to be doing the Try a Chapter tag, and this is going to be the library book edition. So basically, I have a bunch of books I checked out from the library, this stack right here, and I need to give them back soon. And I can't quite figure out whether or not I want to keep them all or not, or whether or not I'm interested in them. I picked all of them up for various reasons, which I'll get into as I pick up each book. But these are all ones that I am slightly hesitant about whether or not I'm actually going to enjoy reading them. So I figured I would do the Try a Chapter tag and just read a chapter of the book or so, and then just see, like, is the writing style vibing with me right now or not? There's a chance that, like, I'll try a chapter today and return it to the library being like, this is not for me right now, and I'll pick it up in the future. Who knows? This is not a I'll never pick up this book again sort of situation, but you know, as library deadlines come up, I may not have time for all of these books, and so I'm going to use this as a way to prioritize my current library stack a little bit. So the first book on this list is Jollof Rice and Other Revolutions, a novel and interlocking stories by Omolola, Ijeoma, Ogunyemi. And this is a book that I had picked up because Simon over at Savage Reads talked about this in like one of his wrap-ups or something along those lines, and it just sounded really interesting to me. I really enjoy contemporary short story collections, and I really enjoy like interlocking short story collections. And so this one will be a little bit more difficult to do in terms of like the Try Chapter tag because this is short stories. But what I'm gonna do with this one is read about like 15 pages or so. I briefly flipped through the first story just to see how it's set up, and there are kind of like chapter breaks or section breaks in the story, and so I'm going to give it about like 15 pages or so and see how it goes, and then around that point when I get to a section break I'll stop. Alright, I just finished the first 16 pages of the first story. No brainer, I'm keeping this one. I'm going to keep going with this one. It's also a relatively short book, and so I can easily see myself getting to this one before the end of the month and then just returning it early because I read it and I liked it. But yeah, so far, really enjoying this one. The first story starts with a woman named Ijeoma who seems to be like very blessed in a way. Like she seems like a really wonderful woman, and you kind of follow her briefly as she like grows up, and you see as she gets married to a man and she's unable to get pregnant, and then she actually ends up convincing her husband to get a co-wife, and then they have kids together, and then so I'm sure more stuff is going to happen. Again, I only read the first 15 pages, but I'm really enjoying this writing style, and I'm definitely very intrigued to see what the other stories are in this book. All right, the next book on the list is one of two books that kind of inspired this video, and that's Fire Rush by Jacqueline Crooks. This is a book that I got from the library because I wanted to do a video where I read through the Women's Prize shortlist, but it just didn't work out for a variety of reasons. But I still had this book checked out from the library, and now it's come to the point where I'm just like, I don't know how much I really want to read this book, but I also don't want to return it without giving it a chance, because there is a chance that I will enjoy this book. So let's try a chapter and see how it goes. All right, this one, not for me, at least not right now. It's not that it's bad, but it's just that the dialogue is written in dialect. And so I feel like this is one that would work better for me on audio, because I find that whenever things are written in a dialect or anything along those lines, if I can actually just hear the conversations, I enjoy them much more than trying to read it. And so, yeah, I could see myself potentially liking this book. I mean, obviously, I didn't really get a sense of the book itself from like the first 15 pages or so, but I feel like that this is a book that has the potential to be one that I really enjoy. The way that it's written and like having limited time and all of those things, my brain isn't really connecting with the writing, and so I feel like this is one that I have to return to the library, maybe return to the book at a future point, and then if I do, maybe try it on audio instead. The next book on the list is the second book that kind of inspired this video, and that's The Adventures of Amina Al-Sirafi. This is a book I picked up from the library because I was going to try to read people's favorite books, and this is one that was mentioned in my comment section, and I I wanted to read it for that video, didn't get around to it. And the reason why this book was part of the reason why I decided to do this video is because I tried to read this one, but it just was not working for me. But I also was trying to read it right before bed. And I don't think that was like a fair assessment of the book because I think I was just too tired. But my hesitation with this book is that it's a fantasy book. Fantasy is very hit or miss for me. I'm not much of an SFF girly. And so when I find fantasy that I love, I'm really excited about it. But I feel like a brain that takes longer to get into fantasy and science fiction and things like that because I'm not quite as used to it. So I feel like this is a book that I need to give like a fair chance to before deciding whether or not it's for me, And so I want to do like a try a chapter situation with this book before deciding whether or not to return to the library. Plus it has to be returned relatively soon. So that's also why. Yeah. All right. I'm into this one. I had a feeling that I just needed to give it a good chance to like fully dive into this one before fully writing it off. I do think I need to be slightly more awake and focused in order to start this one, but I do think that this one is worth giving a shot before returning it to the library. So very excited about that, especially because this one also has a very intriguing first chapter where you're kind of getting introduced to the woman you're going to be following for the story, and she seems to be a potentially mystical or magical fisherwoman who in the beginning like attacks another mythical being, and it's a very interesting start to the book. So I feel like this is kind of the perfect book to do for a try a chapter tag because it gives you a very compelling start, and if you're not compelled by this first chapter, then you're probably not going to be compelled by this book. All right, next up on the list is The Double Life of Benson You by Kevin Chong. This is a book that I picked up on a whim from the library when I was there. Again, if you watch the last vlog, I briefly did a little haul, and this is one of the books that I picked up just because the cover caught my eye. This is a book of metafiction who is following a comic book writer, and so this is one where I feel it could be hit or miss. Like metafiction may or may not work for me, and so I feel like I can try a chapter and see sort of how it goes. And if I'm intrigued, I can keep going. If not, no harm. All right, this one has me intrigued. I'm not completely sure if there's a way for me to talk about what I read in this first chapter because, again, it's metafiction. And so it's hard to know exactly what's going on quite yet. There's like a one-page letter from a character named C, and they're writing to someone who has become like a comic book creator, and I think they reference some of the work that they've done and how it's based on some of the things that happened to them previously. And then the first chapter follows this kid named Benny as he pulls a cart for his grandmother. They live in Chinatown, I believe, in the 1980s, and you're just kind of getting a setup for his life. And he has an aunt who is part of a rock band, and she leaves for 2 months and things like that. And so I'm just intrigued by this one. This is one where, again, I have hesitations about whether or not it's going to work for me, but it's relatively short, and that first chapter intrigued me. So I'm probably going to hold on to this one to try to read it before it's due. All right, and the final book that I have on my stack is The Unfortunates by J K Chukwu. This is a book that I also picked up from the library on a whim while I was there. I just saw it, the cover caught my eye. The inside flap sounded intriguing enough, so I decided to just bring it home. And so I figured, again, I can give the writing an actual try now to see if this is a book that will work for me. All right, this one, not quite sure about. So this book is following a Black woman who is attending an Ivy League college, an unnamed Ivy League college, and she is writing a thesis about being a Black person at college. And The Unfortunates refers to Black students who have died before finishing at this university. She talks about how there were 10, less than 10, I think she says 7 or something like that, Black students, and one of them transferred and one of them left and all of these things. And so she's just kind of reckoning with the fact that she is just one of the only Black students, let alone Black women, at this university. And so the way that it's written is really interesting interesting. There's like a zine type quality to it. You can kind of see it in the pages here. There's like some bits that are like handwritten to the thesis committee and things like that. And I'm not quite sure if it's working for me. However, again, I'm intrigued by this concept and the synopsis, and especially because I am recording this the Sunday after a lot of Supreme Court decisions have been made, including ones about affirmative action, which I'm not going to get into it, but after that decision, I'm like more interested in keeping this book on my shelf and giving it a try and seeing what it has to say. The author, I just glanced at the back flap, and the author has gone to brown, so I'm sure some of this has basis in reality and things like that. And so this is one where if I run out of time, I run out of time, but I might try to squeeze it in before it's due. All right, so that was the Try Chapter Tag. These are the 3 books that I am most excited by from this stack. These 2, I'll try to get to them if I can, but if I can't, then it's okay. And also they're library books, so I can always just recheck them out later. But it is nice to do this with library books, especially when you're like me and you just pick things up on whims, or you just have ideas for things, but you're never really sure how the books are going to work out for you. But I also think that's perfect for the library as well. And so doing something like this was actually really nice. I've never done Try Chapter Tag before. And so I actually really like this concept, especially with library books. And so I feel like I'm willing to try this again in the future. So let me know down in the comments below if you enjoyed this, and let me know if you'd be interested in seeing more of this in the future. Like maybe I'll just pick out random books from the library and see how they work for me, or something along those lines. Or if you've read any of the books that I mentioned here today, feel free to leave a comment down below letting me know your thoughts on them. Obviously no spoilers because I haven't actually read them yet. So yeah, that's all I have for now, and thanks for watching.